Get your dancing shoes on because the NCAA tournament is finally here. Grace Remington here breaking down the 2023 March Madness bracket with you. We got some pro tips to help you find some of the best upsets, but first, let's take a look at the #1 seeds. Alabama, the top overall seed. The first time in program history that the Crimson Tide have been any type of 1 seed. Houston, #2 overall as the 1 seed in the Midwest region. Kansas, #3 overall, the top seed in the West. Some controversy there that we're going to hit on later. And Purdue, the final 1 seed in the East region. So let's bring in 24/7 Sports college basketball staff writer Isaac Trotter for a deeper dive into this bracket now. Isaac, we'll start in the South region here with top seed Alabama. Obviously, the Brandon Miller news is overshadowing one of the best seasons in school history. And there was a dip in production when news of his connection to a murder case first broke. However, Alabama now coming off an SEC tournament title. How do you feel about the team now?
Yeah, I think Alabama's playing as well as it's played all season long, and they look like they're primed for a deep March run. I think they have to love this draw with what they got. West Virginia and Maryland are 2 really tough teams that they could potentially play in the round of 32, but they're not as deep as Alabama. And Alabama has those lead guards that you definitely need, and they don't just have 2, they have 3 lead guards, and then you add in Brandon Miller. That's when it gets fun with this Alabama team. So I feel really good about where this team is trending. I think they have a really great path to Houston and making it to the Final Four. And now we just get to see the best of this team. I think that what they've showed in the SEC tournament is that they're playing their best basketball at the right time. That wasn't the case at the end of the regular season. So if that version of Alabama that we saw at the SEC tournament comes up to play in the NCAA tournament, you're going to have a hard time beating this team because they're really, really deep and they're really talented, and they do it on both ends of the floor.
And let's not forget, they'll be playing in Birmingham, so they could potentially start this thing off with 2 home games. All right, Creighton was a popular pick to win it all at the start of the season. Still an intriguing pick here as a 6th seed, but history is against them. Since the bracket expanded in 2011, 6 seeds have won just 45% of their games against 11 seeds. So, hey, keep that in mind for your upset picks. And an 11 seed has won this game in 17 straight tournaments. But Isaac, you're saying Creighton's going to buck the trend. Why is that?
Yeah, this is not a typical 6 seed. Creighton is a team with a ton of talent. At their peak, we've seen them look like one of the top 10 teams in the country. I think they're 13th right now on KenPom. And when we look at an NCAA tournament, we're looking for teams that are elite on both ends of the floor. Creighton has that. Top 25 in defense and top 25 in offense. Those are those key benchmarks that you want to stay inside of, and Creighton fits those builds. And one of the biggest problems with Creighton this year has been their lack of depth. But I don't think that's going to be magnified that much in the NCAA tournament. The starting 5 has one of the elite net ratings in all of college basketball. They're one of the best starting 5s in the country. They have a defensive player of the year back-to-back years in Ryan Kalkbrenner, who can really protect the rim at a high level. And then this backcourt is super talented, ton of shot makers. Ryan Nembhard's a great point guard. We've seen guys like Baylor Shireman come from South Dakota State and absolutely ball out for them. And Trey Alexander's another breakout star, and Arthur Kaluma's like their big X factor who has NBA upside too. So this Creighton team has 4 NBA guys on their roster right now. Not a lot of other teams have that. And in this region where you're kind of having questions about Virginia and questions about San Diego State and questions about Baylor, I think you could look at Creighton and look at that team as one that maybe gives Alabama a run for its money in the Elite Eight.
All right, moving on to the Midwest region now. Houston is the 1 seed, but could potentially play a road game in Birmingham if it meets Auburn in the 2nd round. But Isaac, let's talk about 4 seed Indiana, led by Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's averaging a double-double in points and rebounds this season, but he almost didn't make it here. The original plan last season was to declare for the NBA draft. So how much does this tournament run affect his legacy with the Hoosiers?
This is everything. Trayce Jackson-Davis has accomplished so much during his time in Indiana. The stats are great. The numbers he's put up this year are phenomenal. His leadership, the person that he is. But there's one thing missing. That's wins in March. And this is Indiana's time to go on a deep run, and for Trayce Jackson-Davis to really cement his legacy as one of the all-time Indiana players. And that's saying something for one of the prestigious college basketball programs in the country. This is a tough draw, though. They have a first-round game that's going to be brutal. If they advance to that game and maybe play a Miami team, that's a terrific Miami team that can score in the 80s. If they advance past that and they get Houston, that's an awesome team as well. So this is a very, very tough region for Indiana. But this is a team that's capable of doing it. Trayce Jackson-Davis is capable of doing it. And I think Trayce Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino are probably the 2nd best duo in this NCAA tournament. and you need your stars to play an elite level. Indiana has them. I expect them to make major noise in the big dance.
Texas has been a fun one to watch. The 2-seed Longhorns coming off a dominant win against Kansas in the Big 12 tournament final. And Isaac, it was really cool to see the players rallying around interim head coach Rodney Terry in that post-game press conference after cutting down the nets. How much does his future in Austin depend on their run in the big dance?
Yeah, it's one of the most fascinating storylines in the NCAA tournament. A lot of interim coaches who took over a situation like he inherited at Texas and then went on to win the Big 12 tournament championship and get a 2-seed. A lot of those guys would probably be the head coach right now. And for some reason, there's been a little bit of hesitancy for Texas to strip that interim tag off of Rodney Terry. But I think this is one of those interesting storylines where he has a chance to make Texas make him the head coach. Like if he goes to the Final Four, it's going to be really hard for Texas not to bring Rodney Terry back, especially when you factor in that he helped build this roster. He helped put this roster together. It wasn't just on Chris Beard getting this type of talent into Austin. So this is a very good team that has an interesting draw. Texas A&M would be a very tough matchup in that second round game. So would Penn State. But if you look at what Texas has done lately, just absolutely blowing the doors off of Kansas, not once, but twice, they're trending in a really good direction with their defense, with their multiple guards who can go get one. So they have a lot of those benchmarks that we look at in the NCAA tournament. They fit a lot of those vibes of a team that can win it all. And if they do that, Rodney Terry is going to be the head coach. If not, I still think he's going to be a head coach at a Power 5 level next year, just because he's done such a great job this year. And I think it's going to be really hard for some of these other teams to interview him and then not want to bring him in with the job he's done at Texas this season.
Success under pressure. That's what it's all about. You mentioned the Kansas Jayhawks. So let's go on to the West region now, where Kansas is the top seed. And this is where we run into some problems, because if the Jayhawks had been ranked 1 seed higher, they could have played in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in Kansas City. Instead, they'll be in Las Vegas, possibly. But then you look at the competition on this bracket: UCLA, Gonzaga, UConn, and then you got a 6-seed TCU team that already beat Kansas by 23. How does Kansas survive this gauntlet?
Yeah, this is one of the toughest regions in the NCAA tournament. 5 of the top 11 teams on KenPom are in this region. That's absurd. And so Kansas has its work cut out for them. And right now, with Kevin McCullough suffering back spasms, that's a really painful injury. Their defense is 6 points better in conference play with him on the floor. When he's off the floor, it gets 6 points worse. That's pretty significant. And obviously, Bill Self, too, is another one. He was in the hospital. He did not coach in the Big 12 tournament. That's a big one, too. Kansas is one of the elite teams in college basketball in points per possession after timeouts. That's a lot because of Bill Self. So this region is a gauntlet, and Kansas has to play its best basketball. I expect this starting lineup to really flex its muscles a little bit. I don't think Kansas is going to dip into its bench very often. They have to stick with this starting 5. But you look at that potential second-round game against Arkansas, a team with a ton of NBA talent, or Illinois, who beat Kansas in a secret scrimmage in the preseason. That team also has a ton of talent. Like, this is going to be a really interesting bracket, because you could probably make a strong case for 6, 7, maybe 8 teams coming out. In Kansas, the defending national champs, they've been there, they've done that. But this might be Bill Self's biggest accomplishment if he can make it to the Final Four through a region that looks this loaded.
Right. Well, another reason why it's so loaded is UCLA as the 2 seed, coming off a dramatic loss to Arizona in the Pac-12 tournament final. The Bruins dealing with an injury of their own in Jalen Clark. How much do you think that affects them?
It totally impacts them. He's one of the best defenders in college basketball. But then what you saw in that Pac-12 tournament championship game without Clark, their ability, even without Adama, they had 2 starters out, but their ability to give Arizona so many fits for 40 minutes was so impressive, despite being how shorthanded they are. And it just goes back to who they are. And their best 2 players, Tyger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez, are winners. Pure blank. These guys just absolutely know what it takes to win in March. Jaquez has fought through everything. He sprains multiple ankles. He gets guarded by 3 or 4 guys a game. He gets double teamed all the time. He has to guard multiple guys on the floor, and he's just a winner. And so, you look at this UCLA squad, I get that this region is loaded. I think they can come out of it. This is a talented team that you have these freshmen, a very talented freshman class that are playing a whole lot better. You look at a guy like Amari Bailey. Beginning of the year, he was a little underwhelming. Now he's playing like one of their best players. He was terrific in the Pac-12 tournament. So I'm a big fan of this UCLA team. I know they don't have Jalen Clark. guess I just don't care, because I feel like this team is capable of making a Final Four run, potentially winning it all.
And finally, let's go to the East region where Purdue is the top seed. Let's talk about Duke, another one of those dangerous 5-12 matchups here. They get Oral Roberts. Coach John Shire with big shoes to fill in his first season as head coach. The criticism came at first, but then it left. Duke, one of the hottest teams in the nation right now after winning the ACC tourney. A lot of that has to do with Jeremy Roach getting healthy. So how far do you think the Blue Devils can go?
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you get healthy. The team that they thought that they were going to have in the preseason has finally come together, and I don't think it's a big surprise that they're starting to play at a really high level. These five-star freshmen have started to really get comfortable. Tyrese Proctor is playing a lot better. Derek Lively is protecting the rim like a madman, and Kyle Filipowski has just been very consistent for them down the stretch. And then you add in Roach, that's just the missing link that they absolutely needed. So I feel great about where Duke is trending. But, man, they kind of got underseeded a little bit. I felt like they had a really good chance to get a 4 seed. And so when you get the 5, now you have to play a 12 seed like Oral Roberts, who's terrific and can absolutely win that game. That's a tough draw for Duke. But I expect Duke, if they can, like this is a region that I think is probably the most wide open. There's no reason why Duke can't come out of this region with the way that they're playing lately. This is a team that probably should have won 14 of the last 15 games if they had a couple calls go their way late in regulation.
Another blue blood in this region, although they didn't look like it for a lot of the season. Kentucky's season has been a roller coaster, to say the least, but fun storyline here as the Cats face Providence, whose leading scorer is former teammate and Kentucky transfer Bryce Hopkins. What kind of trouble will he and the Friars give his former team?
Yeah, Bryce Hopkins is a bucket. He is one of the best players in college basketball, one of the most impactful transfers in college basketball. And Kentucky had him in the building last year and didn't play him, and we weren't really sure why. And he goes to Providence. He's had a great year, but overall, Providence really hasn't been playing that great down the stretch. Hopkins has been pretty good, but the rest of the team has kind of crumbled, especially on the defensive end. They've had a lot of mistakes on the defensive end. So I expect Kentucky to take care of business against Providence in that first-round game. Hopkins could probably get 30, but I think Kentucky still has the better team overall. And then you look at their draw, too, with Kansas State. Kansas State lately, their offense has been betraying them a little bit, outside the top 50 in offense since February 1st, according to Bart Torvik. So I expect Kentucky to make a little bit of noise. I think getting to the Sweet 16 would be a win for this group compared to everything. I know in Kentucky you have high expectations. It's been a few years since Kentucky has won an NCAA tournament game, so getting to that second weekend would be a great step in the right direction, and then you just see what happens from that point on.
All right, we'll let the madness begin. Thank you, Isaac. Good luck to you and your bracket. Good luck to everyone watching, filling out your brackets. For more college hoops news, please like this video and subscribe to the 24 Sports channel.